Hey, this is Craig. What I've been loving about these interviews is seeing how each person showcases their creativity and passion in different ways, letting us know that there's no set way getting involved with this industry. Our guest on today is no exception. So please listen in to my interview with Caleb Knutson. Caleb, thanks for joining me.
Oh, you're very welcome, Craig.
Okay. So first, let's start off. You want to just tell our audience about kind of how you got involved with theater and film and just your history.
Well, I've been a movie fan my entire life. Was always something that I would be doing, if not every day, definitely every other day or the weekends. I would always be watching movies. It was my thing to do. It was just the thing to do. Getting into theater really was on the performance side. As a younger kid, I was very, very introverted and very shy. But I would, like I said, watch movies and I would just memorize them. Especially people like Robin Williams and Jim Carrey, anyone who was funny like that, just memorize their stuff over and over again. And I don't know why. It was seventh grade, I think, is when things started to turn around and when I started to become that class clown type character in middle school and in high school. I remember really the big theatrical performance thing that I did was the talent show, where me and a bunch of my friends got together and we did the Dead Parrot sketch from Monty Python, classic.
Yes.
And then we also attached on the Lumberjack song on top of that, too. It was a big, just a poor budget rendition of it, but it was still a performance. And ever since then, I've been in love with theater, film but much earlier than that. But the theater aspect, that was the turning point for me. So becoming the class clown and kind of the class performer, it was kind of the expectation that I would go on to become this amazing, brilliant, famous actor, right? But my parents always put it in my head that, hey, you're going to go to college and you're going to get a degree. Why? Well, there's no why. You're just doing it.
Yeah.
So finding a theater program, the SVSU was probably the easiest. It was the closest. And at that time, wasn't a full ride scholarship, but they had a scholarship that they just created that would cover a huge portion of your tuition. And I went out for that and was one of the 4 people that got it. And ever since then, they basically owned me because you had to do every production in some leadership way. Performing, stage managing, directing, you had to do something. But it was really the expectation of, you're the performer. So you got to go on and do performing things. But I always wanted that education to have something to fall back on. I mean, not saying that going off and auditioning for shows right away out of high school, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, because it definitely works, and your debt afterwards is way less than what I have going on right now. But for me personally, I love it boosted my intelligence, basically. It developed my public persona. So I would definitely not do it again if I had to, because without that I wouldn't be who I am today.
So for when you went into grad school at Eastern, what was the reasoning behind it, and why did you decide to do grad school?
Again, that was the thing beating my head. I guess my parents have more of a hold on me, or had more of a hold on me than I wanted to admit. But I mean, it was always the plan, and I'm a middle child, so I always had to follow suit to make my parents proud, right? So my older brother, undergrad, master's degree, goes on to almost get his PhD. I don't think he has it. I think he just stopped short, but he went one thing to the next, and that's what I had to do. Plus getting married at that time, actually right after graduating undergrad. My wife was going to grad school too for her master's in music at Western. So it was kind of just like, well, something that I have to do.
You had the fortunate opportunity to kind of start teaching afterwards, and that's kind of a big deal now, where kind of all these ideas coming out of the adjunct professor and the full-time professor, and even, not wanting to bring people fully on board, and especially with everything that's happening now because of COVID-19. What made you kind of go into teaching, and what do you love so much about it?
The reason why I went into it, I had an assistantship in Eastern my second year there. I know the first year I started off slowly just because I didn't have an assistantship and I was paying out of pocket for it, so it's kind of just easing into it. Definitely with the assistantship it helped, but with that assistantship you were teaching one farther down the road, 2 public speaking courses. And just that first class, that first couple of days of teaching, it hooked me. I'm in. I love the look on their faces. I love talking about something that I'm passionate about. Yes, it was public speaking. It was a communications course, but teaching these young people how important words are and the order of words, how you say the words, the emotion that you put behind these words, how important that is, and how it can change things and how it can communicate things to other people from different backgrounds and different cultures. It hooked me. And I went to Lee Stilley, I guess what was his title for me? It was he would overlook my career there, basically.
Yeah.
I sat down in his office after that day and I'm like, you remember that time that you just sat down and you realized that, hey, that's something that I'm wanting to do for the rest of my life? He's like, yeah, I had that. I'm like, yes, I had that today too. So love it. I absolutely love it. And for Eastern, it was communications. I was getting my master's in theater at that time. I thought I had some very unique takes on the communications aspect, along with my other communications graduate degree co-workers, I should say. And then right after grad school, I was fortunate enough, SPSU, the chair of the department there, he's like, hey, as soon as you graduate, contact me. You got a class here to teach, which on one hand is awesome. You get that nice break right out of the gate. On the other side, it's a 2-hour drive. Ugh. And that was back in 2013, well before all of this stuff, and well before classrooms were getting comfortable with doing online courses. So, driving 2 hours. Fast forward, 2013, 2015, when we bought our house in Kalamazoo. So fast forward 2 years, I'm driving 2.5 hours now. It's even farther west of the state. Why not? But I love it. I love teaching theater. To the intro class, I think I've only taught like 2 theater majors during my time there. And I would rather teach 1,000 students that aren't theater majors about theater than teach one that is a theater major.
And why is that?
I don't want to preach to the choir.
Okay.
I approach these intro to theater classes like, okay, I'm going to convince all 30 of you why SVSU is making you take this class, because it's an art selective. You have to take so many. Why are they making you do that? Why is theater a course here that we are teaching? Why does theater exist? If I can convince you 30 people that aren't into theater or have no interest in theater, if I can convince you that it does serve a purpose and that maybe it sparks an interest in you, sparks that creative outlet for you, then I've done my job, and I'm super happy. Yeah, the least you know about theater, the happy I am to teach you.
Yeah, that's really noble, to phrase it that way. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think, we're kind of at this point, especially now, where there is this argument where you have, one group saying, especially as theater and film is making itself more overtly, I think, political or more on the nose in terms of their messages, and you're having people say, like, oh, well, you're just supposed to be there for entertainment's sake. Yeah, I think it's a concept of being able to teach people that aren't necessarily interested in pursuing it for further of like, well, there is a history behind it, and it is at its core something to that gives a message and is political.
On the one hand, absolutely, it's entertaining.
Yeah.
Sure. You're paying professionally, going to a professional theatrical show, hundreds of dollars to see a production. I better be fucking entertained.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this misconception that, it's just fluff musicals or fluff pieces, or the message is so on the nose, like what you were saying. But if you take a look at it from the aspect of, no, this is someone's extension of themselves, extension of their cultural beliefs, their political beliefs, their history, their culture, their background, that they're putting into the performance, into the script, into the lighting design, into the costume design. There's so many extensions of people that you are seeing put on a grand stage. And it's absolutely beautiful. And I mean, if you want to put it in political aspects, theater provides so many different jobs. People think like, it's community theater. It's all fluff. Professional theater, thousands of theaters in New York City alone. 10 people behind the scenes for each actor on stage. Hundreds, thousands of jobs that one performance provides. And theater is a way to provide narrative to people. And I teach an intro class, and I also teach a theater for the education major. So all the education majors at SVSU, they have to take certain arts classes. It's kind of like arts appreciation, basically. So they're taking theater, they're taking art, and they're taking music. Basically, what I'm trying to teach these future teachers is that theater, even though you're probably not going to be teaching theater itself, acting, performing, any of the technical aspects, I want you to focus on the importance of how narrative can help kids learn. How you can tell someone how a cell is created and how a human being is created. Cell breaks off into two and grows after that. But if you give them a narrative behind the scientific method behind that, and you tell a story with that, isn't that much more engaging?
Yeah, I can't.
I think it is. If I was a kid,
I definitely probably was in that same boat where I learned a lot better when I was able to see kind of a story unfold instead of just going straight from the text.
Just reading out of the textbook and taking your standardized tests and all that. No, tell me the story behind this.
And so now, how has things really changed? Or especially, for me personally, I've been thinking about it where theater is, even when you get into something like an acting class, that it is that communal aspect. It is something that you need to be in person for. So how does that switch to online? How does that kind of start affecting the teaching of these programs?
I'll be honest, I didn't have to go through that obstacle during this time because I don't teach the acting courses.
Yeah.
But just from reading joint emails from all of the staff of the theater department, figuring out, okay, so we can't meet, and it's easy to record yourself doing a monologue and submitting that for scene performance, but they were very into doing some type of a 2-person scene online. How it went for them, I don't know. I don't know if they were using programs like Zoom. I know Canvas here. Oh, what does Canvas use? It was like Blue Conference Room. I forget what they used. So, unfortunately, I cannot speak to that.
Yeah.
I do know, though, that with apps like Zoom, conference calls, Teams, things like that, it's become a lot more common and a lot easier to communicate back and forth in a virtual aspect. So I think it's going to be very interesting going forward.
No, Yeah, I agree. I know everybody's talking about how, like, from here on out, even after all of this is lifted and so on and so forth, that like it's set a new precedence for everything, where it's not like it's just going to go back to the way it was before.
No.
That it's, certain jobs have proven that you can just do them from home.
Yeah, my students on the last day, when we did our final exam review, in the chat, they were asking me, do you think we'll be back for fall semester? And I said, yeah, I think we'll be back. I think this would have calmed down and we'll be able to resume classes. And someone else said, do you think, we're going to be meeting more? And I said, well, you know what? Probably not. I think a lot more classes are going to go to the online platform. I think universities, just with the abruptness of this whole thing, because it was literally, we got the news, hey, Michigan is enlisting the stay-at-home order. That night, we got the email from, I think, the president of the university saying, yep, so we're converting to online classes. Okay, sure. I've done that before.
So...
I'm definitely going to be incorporating a lot more online learning and a lot more online lectures and lesson plans going forward, even outside of this crisis, years down the road. We have the technology, why not use it?
And it's definitely even, of course, it's affected the kind of the industry itself. And I know theaters are presenting a lot of their live performances, and even, of course, a lot of movies are being either pushed back or they're going straight to digital for $19 you can watch a new movie that came out. And there's the whole argument now that, the Universal said that they made more money off of Trolls doing it that way than they may have made.
Than doing the theater?
Yeah.
That's probably the thing I'm most interested about, is what's going to happen to movie theaters once all of this clears out. I mean, I would be hesitant to go to the movies.
Yes. And we're kind of in the same boat. I've listened to a lot of as you do a review show where you I think it's very interesting. Instead of, doing whatever's coming out right now, you kind of put your own spin on it, where you have a ton of movies. And for anybody that watches your segment, your episodes, you can see, the whole stacks and the background. And you decided...
and that YouTube channel is called Caleb Watches Movies on YouTube.
With that, you decided to put in all your movies into a randomizer, and you review, these movies that you've had. And some of them you've seen a bunch of times, some of them you are watching for the first time, even.
Some of them I just bought and they just sat there.
Yeah.
And I haven't told my wife about it.
I think, all of us are in that same... Well, I know I'm in that same boat of...
Well, and you remember me in grad school. That's how I would pass the time, driving from home to grad school. I would just put a movie in my old school MacBook Pro that would actually take the disc and have the movie playing while I was driving.
Okay, wow.
Been a movie collector for a while.
Yeah. Well, I heard you mention it in one of your episodes, and I've personally feeling the same way too, where, going to the movie theaters has become so expensive, and it's just harder as you get older, and unless, you're getting screeners and you're getting paid to go see, these movies. Yeah, I think it's just interesting kind of going forward, and I'd just love to hear your thoughts.
I think a lot of theaters are going to go bye-bye, unfortunately, unless something happens, unless actually not some, a lot of movie studios kind of put an effort into reminding people about the experience of going to the movie theater. I know Kevin Feige, the creator of the MCU, is talking about getting people back to the theater and getting theaters back up and running. We'll re-release, a couple of our big MCU tentpole films, and maybe that'll bring people back. But that's only one person. I think we need every single film studio getting, putting the emphasis on, hey, movies, theaters. It's a great experience. Go. But yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah.
It was already expensive.
Yeah.
After all this, I think it's going to be double what it was. And, it's enough for me and my wife. It's just the two of us. But when it's someone, like yourself, you have your wife and then you have a kid, when you start taking them to the theater, that's a good close to $100 now.
Yes.
That's for tickets and a thing of popcorn.
Yeah. Gets close to that. Yeah, just now with just the two of us when we were going.
Right.
And the only times we would go then would be a matinee or when it's almost completely dead anyways. That's why we kind of started to finally go. But no, I think it's funny that you talked about Marvel, and I know other people have said that it's just going to be where the tentpole movies are going to be the theatrical experience, and everything else is just going to basically go to online potentially.
The small indie film, the small art piece film that probably would be the basic like Oscar bait. That's probably going to go straight to a streaming service. Yeah, I mean it's going to be the big superhero Marvel DC action movie that's going to be the thing to go. And to be honest, me and my wife, that's really what we would do anyway.
Yeah.
We would go to the theater when the movies, it would be, it's Birds of Prey just came out. We gotta go. The only thing that's really, keeping me in the spirit of going to the theater when all this calms down is Wonder Woman 84. That's the only thing that I'm like, I gotta see that. It's Gal Gadot. I love her. Yeah, I mean, that's what we were doing. I think a lot more people are going to adapt to that.
And so now going back to talk to Caleb watches movies, kind of what came about with it? Because I know even in your podcast you mention your year in review. You kind of mentioned that there are tons of other review sites, and when we kind of had our conversations talked about that, and like what was the purpose behind Caleb watches movies, and what do you get from it? And
well, like I said, I just love watching movies. But if you are a movie collector, which starting this YouTube channel, I've just discovered that there are so many Facebook groups and online communities that it's like Blu-ray collectors, DVD collectors, Criterion collectors, that my wife thinks I'm insane with what I have over there, but I just want to show her these online groups and be like, I'm nothing. This is nothing compared to these other people. Getting the idea with tackling it really stemmed from after grad school, getting into just kind of working to pay bills, pay rent. We wanted to move into a house, so we did that. Graduating just 3 years after graduating from grad school. And, how do you do that? Well, you just do that by getting a job and getting promoted at a job that is pretty mindless and doesn't take a lot, and kind of getting deeper and deeper into a field that you just didn't see yourself going down and you didn't want to go down. I worked for, I won't say the name of the companies, but it was in the optical field. And optics, I have no scientific medical training, but here I am, the manager now of this optical store. That one keeps closing, and I keep being transferred over to this other store that now is going to be closing. Retail, love it. It's wonderful. Retail is the reason why I tackled this. Really, it was just being, I don't think I would have admitted it back then, but looking back on it now, it's just being depressed over not having a creative outlet and not having something that allows me to be me and to voice my opinion. I have friends. We talk about movies sometime, but it's definitely not to the passion and love that I have for film. And driving back and forth to SVSU, you need something. And I would listen to podcasts, and I would listen to YouTube shows that would review movies. Shows like Jeremy Johns, shows like Chris Stuckman. Love those shows on YouTube, and they would talk about the new movies coming out. And of course, talking about the new movies, everyone wants to know about the new movies. Do I need to go see this movie, or should I not go see this movie? That's why they're so popular, and their channels are well done. Podcasts, I would listen to the Schmoes Know podcasts, and I love their approach on talking about movies. It was the approach of watching a film as the everyday person, as the everyman. Not as the film scholar or the film professor or the theater professor, the acting professor. Everyone watches movies. Everyone's seen movies. Everyone has the capability of going to the theater and watching movies. And the way that they approach reviewing it is, this is a good time. This is a good popcorn flick. You don't have to think about it too much. Or it's a film that this is great. It has a great message behind it. Or this film, where it just seemed like they were just dumbing down everything to the audience. And it's a kids movie. And the kids felt dumber afterwards. So listening to all that, it was a nice outlet for me to listen to people talk about movies. But still, it wasn't me talking about movies.
Yeah.
And really things started to get going in my head about, I can do this. And not only do I think I can do this, I can probably do it better than some of these people. I have no film editing program knowledge of how to go about doing this, but I know I can learn and I know I can do it. So around 2016, I think, is where the seed was planted. And there was this little tiny film that came out. It was actually around my birthday. A little film, and I don't know if the eyes are going to be rolling here, but it's a little film called Batman v Superman, which was a movie that I was just so pumped for. And I just wanted to see it so bad. And when it came out, all of these podcasts and all of these shows that I listened to just panned the thing. Mm-hmm. They hated it. They couldn't understand it. They didn't love anything about it. And I'm sitting there in the theater watching it, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm loving this. At least the theatrical version, I was like, I really, really like this. And then when the Ultimate Edition came out later on Blu-ray, I'm like, I love this movie so much. But it's like whenever I brought that up in conversation, everyone just kept either talking over me or putting me down. Again, I wasn't getting my voice heard. I wasn't getting that creative outlet for me to talk about something that I felt passionate about and I felt love for. And then the next year, I watched, I watched La La Land.
Okay.
Gosh, another, corporate movie. Everyone just, loves to hate, I guess. But I watched that one night, and the message of that movie to me, at least what I got from it, was like, you can't be happy unless you can't be happy with someone if you can't be happy with yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you can't find the happiness, or at least something that makes you happy, to do something that makes you happy, you have to focus on doing that first before you can actually get into a relationship. Of course, here was the opposite way around. I love my wife very, very much. But I was definitely not doing something that I loved at that time, even though I was teaching only a class, and I'm an adjunct. I'm not a full-time professor. It's one day a week for me. So that night, after watching La La Land, I pulled an all-nighter, and I'm getting things down. I am looking for free music to use. I'm putting my ideas down on a logo, on an introduction. What's going to be my concept? What do I want to do? I want to talk about movies, but I don't want to do what everyone else is doing, talking about the new movies that are coming out. I have this huge collection that is just sitting here that it's so hard to decide, hey, what am I going to watch tonight? Or what do I want to watch? I don't know how big your collection is, but I don't know if you've ever sat there looking at it just blankly thinking, what do I want to watch? I don't know what I'm in the mood for.
Yeah, I usually end up to the point where I just don't watch anything.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, it's too hard to decide.
Yeah. Or I'll put something on and then I go, well, that's not exactly what I wanted. Maybe I'll try this one. And next thing I know, it's 3 a.m. and I've watched maybe 10 minutes of 5 different movies. And
there's a stack of DVDs now on your counter.
Yeah.
That now you have to put back. But I'm such a nerd about my collection that I'd already cataloged all of them, so I know how many I have and which ones I have, so I don't repeat whenever I go to like a resale shop or whatever. I'm like, why don't I do this? Instead of watching the new movie that comes out, maybe occasionally I would do that, but instead of doing that, I'm going to randomly select one of these movies. It can be newer, it can be a classic, it can be something that I've never seen before, it could be action, it can be drama, it can be romance, it can be horror. I know this is a horror a YouTube channel and podcast that you have, not the biggest horror guy, but it could be that.
Yeah.
And just the idea of the unknown and the excitement of, oh, hey, what's coming next? Just, it gave me that butterfly in my stomach. And I'm like, I have something here, and I'm really excited, and I'm going to do this. So that was March of 2017, and so I'm sitting on all this stuff, playing around with iMovie, because that's the only program that I have access to. So I'm like, okay, I kind of have an idea of how to do this. I just needed that extra push. And later that year, in 2017, my wife and I went to go see the movie Wonder Woman. And I talked about this in my review of Wonder Woman, but that is the movie that gave me the kick in the ass to, just after watching that film, I cried so much because it affected me emotionally on so many different levels. And I cried like 6 times in that movie. Like, this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Just being a comic book fan, seeing her finally on screen, taken like 76 years for that to happen. But it's like the perfect timing for that to happen too, with the women's, with the Me Too movement and everything that was happening around that time. It gave me the kick. I'm like, the next day, I said, I'm starting this because that movie was awesome and I need to start talking about movies again. That was 2017, 3 years later, and my channel's at 1,100 subscribers, which I never thought maybe eventually would happen, but it's weird thinking that it's actually happened.
Like I said, I love watching it, and I think what I admire, of course, is that you're you're honest that, these are your opinions, and I like that you're, taking it from the everyman approach, where you could say you can have your own opinion, and, these are just my personal, where, a lot of these podcasts kind of come off where it does feel like, well, if you don't believe what we're saying, then you're wrong. I think a lot of times. And I think too, where you were just you're very straightforward and very, you hold true to your opinion, and has that kind of affected, obviously dealing with what they call the trolls, or even whoever, of course, once you get to a certain point of subscribers or viewers, you're going to get that.
God, yeah. Well, I'll first say that I wouldn't have that opinion and straightforwardness and that strength behind providing that straightforward opinion without going to grad school. Before that, I don't think I really had an opinion of my own. I was kind of just like floating through opinion-wise, but really grad school, even with the immense debt that I had from it, it taught me to develop me and my opinions and my public persona and my personal beliefs. So if anything, I attribute so much to grad school for that.
I agree with that surprise, because going into grad school, I had the thought, because you think about, people that go through it and the image that is made, where you're assuming you're going to be like looking at a movie or theater or whatever you may be going into at a very critical eye and like only highbrow and all of that. But even for myself personally, I think as I came out of grad school, it was the same thing of like feeling more of, well, I like, even if everybody hates this, I like it because I like it. And I don't necessarily need that reasoning, but because it's like, in my opinion, it works for me.
Yeah. And I'm also shocked at how much I didn't know about theater coming into grad school. From undergrad, I'm like, and going to grad school, I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't learn any of this. What the heck was I being taught in undergrad? Lee Stilley kicked my ass. Yeah, so without grad school, I wouldn't have that honest, straightforward persona. But yeah, like what you were saying, the more subscribers you have and the more views you get, out come the people out from under the bridge who have their own opinions that don't necessarily agree with yours. And oh boy, if you talk bad about their movies, it's like you're killing their firstborn. Oh my God, I think I when you told me that we were going to be doing this, I went through my videos And I was like, what are the ones that I have like the worst thumbs down percentage on my channel? And oh boy, all of these, there's like 6 movies here. There's Good and the Bad and the Ugly, which is, classic spaghetti western. In that review, I came out and I was honest. I know I should like this movie. I know it's cinematically, it is one of the greatest movies ever made. I get that. I just don't get this movie. I respect it. I'm not a Western guy.
Yeah.
Empire of the Sun, for whatever reason. I think I gave that one a positive review, but Empire of the Sun is not doing well. Woodstock or Bust, which was actually my first screener that I received, which really all of the screeners that I have are done digitally. So I know you asked the question earlier, we kind of skipped over it, but yeah, all the screeners that I get basically are digital. I was asked to go to a premiere in Detroit kind of at last minute for one of their films. I think Willem Dafoe was going to be there. Fortunately, I couldn't go, but Woodstock or Bust. I despised it. I was like, my first screener. I'm not liking this. I got into a little verbal back and forth with the director of the movie, who went on to my YouTube channel and into that page and posted in the comments section of, well, look at my subscriber count at the time. Really, my opinion doesn't mean anything. That's basically what she said. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing here. Okay, let me school you, son. Gave her my retort, my professorly retort, and she hasn't commented since. Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Oh my God. I fear for my life reading that comment section. I don't know if you want some nice reading material, go to that review. Jesus Christ. It's a movie that I just didn't get, didn't really like it, wasn't connecting to me in any way who these people are. Characters, in my opinion, just aren't good people. But my God, you think I'd be, again, slaughtering their firstborn. And then there's a movie called Iron Sky. Have you ever heard of Iron Sky or seen this film?
Yes, I haven't seen the sequel. I watched the first one, I think when it came out years and years ago.
Yeah. A movie that, again, I just don't get. I didn't like. I'm going along for the ride. It's Nazis in space on the moon. Okay, I'm going along with this. But then you start breaking physical ideas of gravity and just momentum on the moon, and I'm checked out. But wow, all of these people, it's again, it's like I'm talking bad about their mother or something, and I'm just thinking to myself, guys, these in the grand scale of everything, it's just movies. What you're saying to me is just it's so uncalled for.
I guess that actually brings up a really good question about kind of fandom. And, I know over the past several years, especially with Game of Thrones ending the way it did, with Star Wars, where you have all of these people making petitions and saying, redo it, or, and they get hundreds of thousands of signatures or whatever. And I think it kind of brings up, I'd love to hear you kind of talk more about it, especially being a comic book fan. About, people feeling that need that it's theirs, but not thinking, even, the original Star Wars, the first trilogy, people really don't care too much initially for Return of the Jedi, where now if you were to say things like that, it's like, oh, well, George Lucas had it planned all along, and it's like the defenders, I guess, of this material that they hold so sacred.
Yeah, no, it's really a two-sided sword.
Yes.
Yeah, two-sided sword. On the one hand, you have this passionate fan base, and you have this passionate community that is making your franchise what it is. The amount of talking about it online, the amount of revenue that you get from merchandise sales and book sales and other spin-off series from these franchises. You need to have this passionate fan base behind it. Absolutely. But there's also the other side that, again, they've grown up with it, especially in the comic book world. Well, I guess Star Wars too. But comic book, Star Wars, all of these characters created in the 1930s, the 40s with the Golden Age. People have grown up with these characters as a little kid. So when they see a director take a new approach on a beloved character like Superman. Basically, you can use Man of Steel as the example here. We have Superman not being the the stand-up blue Boy Scout who is, here for truth, justice, and the American way. Let's take the interpretation of he's an alien, he is an outsider, he's figuring out who he wants to be, why he was sent here, what his purpose is here, and how he wants to basically live his life. Some people are open to it. Some people are like, it's not my Superman. Star Wars, I don't know where you fall on the Last Jedi thread, but either you love the movie or you hate the movie. And it's the mentality of, if you're not with us, you're against us. That's what gets fandom toxic. And toxic to the point where things being said that shouldn't be said, like death threats and assault threats that are just ridiculous. Why even throw that out there? Why do you care what my opinion is if it's not the same as yours? Yeah, I don't know. So what do you think of Last Jedi? Or do we want to get into that?
I am going to say probably something sacrilegious that I have yet to watch it.
That is not sacrilegious. And you know what? I am a firm believer of never shunning anyone for not seeing a movie. Starting this channel is like one of the core values that I have about movie watching. Thousands of movies come out each year.
Yes.
It is impossible to see every single one. Even big tentpole films like Star Wars. So instead of you saying, I've never seen it before, and someone going, what? You need to stop what you're doing and watch it. Instead of saying that, we should envy you, because now you get to watch this movie for the very first time. Something that I could never get to do again.
No, I like hearing it that way.
Right?
No, I've always...
Don't you feel better?
Yeah, no, I do. It helps me feel better. No, I've been wanting to watch it, and I actually, obviously with people posting about it, I kind of know the twists and the plot line, but no, I don't know why I never got around to it, and I'm interested in it. I think I can understand both viewpoints, but then from the storyteller part of me, I knew it was one of those things where there was no winning, basically, with Last Jedi, right. I guess.
Well, and I think that's what the new Star Wars trilogy was to begin with.
Yes.
It's okay, you're writing yourselves into a corner. Your Force Awakens, you're starting off great, but this is not going to end well. I knew that back in 2015. Yeah. And after Last Jedi, I was like, yep, Rise of Skywalker. I love the movie, but I'm like, you don't stand a chance. I'm sorry. It's this weird dichotomy of people being so passionate with so much love towards something that when someone is hired on to be a writer or hired on to be a producer or a director, and they have a unique take on the lore of a character that you've grown up with over the years, if it doesn't go along with your sense of what the mythology is and what's canon and who these people are, you start shunning it and you start hating it when really there's no need to do that. You have the original Star Wars trilogy. Just watch that. You're fine. You have the 1978 Superman movie. Watch that.
Yeah.
78 or 79. Oh, shit.
I think it's 78.
Oh, crap. I'm going to be crucified for that one.
Yeah.
It's 70. I said 78.
It's 77.
God, I got to look that up now. Oh, Jesus. Hold on. This is important. 78.
Yep,
okay.
78. You were right.
I got it. Okay. But yeah, you have that. Go watch that. It's fine. But in order for franchises and for things to go along, we can't just keep repeating the same things over and over again. We need these new interpretations. We need these new people in here giving new, fresh ideas. Maybe not the best ideas, but it's keeping them fresh and keeping the conversation going.
Which I was actually more interested in when they started talking about, even sticking with Star Wars, doing a trilogy that had no connection whatsoever to, Skywalkers, to any of it. Because you have this whole universe, and to me that was like, oh, this is something then I could get behind. Because, I don't know, it just seemed interesting. Like, you have this whole universe and you're only focusing on, this lineage of family.
Right, and that was the problem with the prequels, right? It was, you have this whole vast galaxy that we can go to so many different characters. Yeah, we can kind of stay with the Skywalker lineage, but we can go to different planets we've never been before. But instead we get, Darth Vader created C-3PO. Okay. it shrunk the universe. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. It has its bad moments. It's really, in the end, as long as you're passionate about something, and if you are passionate about hating something, or if you're passionate about loving something, as long as you're not actually hurting anyone, I guess, then who the hell cares? That's what I teach in my theater class. It's the second day when we're talking about writing reviews. That's a big thing that they have to do in that class, is writing reviews on the shows that they see. I talk about different people that I've known in the arts world. Heather Antos, comic editor, and she's just been crucified on social media for being a woman in the comic business. That's all. And there's this subgroup of men that just keep attacking her and saying just the worst sexual assault things that I've ever seen that I will not repeat. Let's not be dicks to each other, basically.
Yeah.
It's what I teach them. And theater, movies, art, music, when you're creating that as an artist, it's an extension of yourself, and you have every right to put it out there. But as an artist, it is a very important, and it's a difficult skill to learn, that when you put your art out there, that art is going to be interpreted by someone that may be paying for it, that may be viewing it online or in a museum, on the radio, and they might not like that extension of yourself. As long as they have their reasoning behind it and they are respectful of you for doing it, but they have their own opinions, if you stay true to yourself and that is your art that you're putting out there, then who the fuck cares? Yeah. Who hates it? Or, who loves it? As long as you are true to yourself, that's the most important thing. And that's really why I love doing my YouTube channel, is because it's probably the most true that I feel in my life is when I'm doing that and being myself and putting that extension of myself out there. Yes, the trolls are going to come out from under their bridge because for whatever reason they love their Nazi moon movies. But sure, love it. That's fine. I didn't, and I'm okay with that, and I'm just going to move on.
That's actually interesting. We've already touched on it a little bit, but talking about if you love it, you love it as long as you're not hurting anybody. If you don't, you don't, as long as you're not hurting anybody. But there's kind of this mentality that comes up now among people where it's like if they don't personally like the movie, it means that the movie, and this could be the case potentially, but that the movie was just poorly made.
Oh,
like, I know that I watched your segment on Nebraska, and I'm a big fan of it, and I know you talked about loving it, but I remember when it first came out, they didn't like the movie, and they said that it was poorly made, it was like a student made it, and, they just went on this whole rant of that, not that they didn't like it, but the reason why they didn't like it wasn't personal. I mean, it was because, it was worse than The Room, or, something like that. And I was kind of dumbfounded of this.
Worse than The Room. Wow.
No, the movie, even if you can not like it, that's perfectly fine. But it's well made. You can't deny that part of it. It's just not your cup of tea. And I think that's an interesting thing you're kind of bringing up.
Yeah, it's that strange thing, and I think it's been definitely more so now with social media and having the capability of putting your opinion out there in the comfort of your own home behind the computer screen. But it's this mentality of if you're kind of like lukewarm on something, it's just an automatic, this was terrible. Worse than The Room, Nebraska. That's great. I will say I have never once thrown a spoon at the screen while watching Nebraska.
Yeah.
Hi, get into the car, Grandpa.
Yeah.
What are you doing? No, I'm not going to Nebraska. You didn't win anything.
That's great. Yeah, I think everything you're talking about is great. And what I'd love to kind of talk to, of course, a lot of this segment is all about giving kind of this authentic look at, when people go into theater or film, especially in schools, there's this mentality that, you have to, there's like this one way of doing the career, and there's one way of the success. Like if you're an actor, the only way that it's proven in success is that you win an Oscar or you win a Tony or you win, whatever. And I think you're proving that too, that there's all these outlets that you're utilizing your career, and it is a success in its own way.
It's something that was definitely not taught to me in undergrad. What really wasn't taught to me in grad school either. It was still that mentality, or at least I'd always had that mentality of, okay, if I'm going down the performance aspect, I gotta move to New York. I gotta audition for a big show and win that Tony Award. Or I gotta move out to out west. I gotta move to Hollywood and get one of those big roles and win that Oscar. That's the only, that's the pinnacle, right? And once you get there, then you've made it. Which I guess over the years, getting out of grad school and dealing with depression, and again, like I would never admit that back then, but it's definitely what it was. Dealing with some kind of depression like that and figuring out I'm not doing that route that everyone talked to me about. I'm not on that path that everyone expected that I was going to go down. You only have one life to live, and there's no one person that you need to prove yourself to other than yourself. I wish I would have known that there was so many different things that you could do in the arts world. I wish that was taught to me in undergrad, even in high school, in middle school, and of course, YouTube wasn't around back then. Social media wasn't a thing back then, but still, there is so much that you could do. I've had friends that have gone on to become prop masters at a professional theater. That was never taught, at least when I was in undergrad, as a route to go down in the theatrical and the arts world. But he's killing it as a prop master. He builds props. Of course, you could go down the route of being a professional singer. It doesn't mean that you need to win, an Emmy. You don't have to go to New York and perform on Broadway. You don't have to sing for the Met. If you are singing and if you feel that you are putting yourself 100% into your craft, and you have that creative outlet, and you feel that that extension of yourself is going to go out there and you're imprinting really your legacy on whoever is listening to you or whoever is respecting your art, then who the hell cares about that one set path to glory and statues or whatever? And then you realize just how political the Oscars are, and you're like, well, who wants that?
Yeah,
I voted for myself. Isn't that enough?
Yeah, you realize that they send gift baskets, and that's you have
to go to this party. I got to go to this party and talk to these people.
So, going more on because you talked about having kind of a class clown approach, and when we were in school together, you were in grad and I was in undergrad at the time. Obviously, we both kind of were put into more comedic roles, very comedic roles. I'll say it that way. Yeah. Which is fine, but I remember you did your directing show. I can't think of it right now. And it was very serious, and I didn't think it wasn't what was expected of, us interacting and seeing your stage performance and stuff like that at the time. I know all genres you enjoy, but what really draws you to a story?
It's really the characters and the plot. What's the story? Who are these people? Are they well-rounded? Are they well thought out? Can I connect to any of them, or can I see their viewpoint, whether it's something I agree with or something I'm not? Can I understand where they're coming from? So are they empathetic in some way? And the story, do things make sense? Do things flow? Is there a nice solid message behind it? Okay, maybe it is more complicated. Really, I connect to more, and it's different really for everyone. Some people, all they want in their film going experience is that fluff entertainment side of the story. They want their fluff jukebox musical. They want their kind of nice, easygoing, well, I wouldn't say thoughtless, but just popcorn movie, something that you can just shove popcorn into your mouth while it's going on, and you're entertained. And if that is your criteria for what is a good movie, then all the more power to you. For me, it's the plot and it's the characters. Whether there's explosion, whether there's spectacles happening on the screen, I could care less. As long as in the forefront. In the forefront, we have plot and we have character. As long as those things are obvious that they are the things that are that we're focusing on the most, then I'm in, and I would consider it a solid movie. I always use in teaching, when we're talking about reading plays, watching movies, go off of Aristotle's Poetics and the 6 elements of drama. How they would judge theater back in old Greek times. How do they do that? Well, they did it with this list, and on the top of that list, there was the first number one thing, most important thing that you need in your plays was plot. Second was character. Spectacle, the music, the diction of the show, those were at the bottom. Important, but they were at the bottom. Plot and character, those are the most important things.
Good solid answer.
You can go watch a Michael Bay film where that is completely flipped, and hey, we want spectacles. We'll figure out the story as we go along. Oh, Optimus Prime Heaven? Yeah, that makes sense. Sure. But explosions, fireworks everywhere.
And now we're getting into the wrapping up questions about what is kind of the theme of this podcast. Well, not kind of, is the theme a lot of times, is horror. So, is there any horror that you've seen recently that you would really recommend? What do you look for in horror? And
horror! I always love calling it horror films.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not careful, I'm definitely saying horror when I'm when I'm on my channel.
Yes,
recent horror films. Recently, I just released my review of The Conjuring, which for me, when it comes to horror films, I really get into like the big produced ones. I have on my list this summer to be watching It Comes at Night, which I hear is a horror film. I've never seen it before. Actually, I had just watched and just recorded my review. I hadn't edited yet, but it's going to come out in a couple of weeks. A good friend of mine, Jerry Dennis, who is the technical director of SVSU, my theater department. You go over to his house, you go to his basement, it is a horror guru's fantasy land. He has mannequins, masks, fake blood, figurines, just everything, everywhere. And he will give me all of these random, weird recommendations that I'm finally getting around to. He recommended this movie, and I think maybe it's not a horror film, but it's a movie called The Taint.
Okay.
Have you heard about this?
I haven't seen it. I know the name.
It's free on YouTube. You just type in The Taint. I think it's 2011, and it's there. It's like an hour 10. And it refers to the tainting of the water.
Okay.
Not, that 2-inch section. Even though there are plenty of penises that show themselves in this movie. Horror and just out there, what the hell am I watching? And I know you guys have talked about films like that on your channel a couple of times, so I wanted to throw my 2 cents in there. I'm like, hey, here's something obscure and something out there. Horror, my favorite horror film is the 2015 film The Witch.
Okay.
Or The Vivitch, however you want to say that title. For me, witches in woods terrify me.
Have you seen?
I think that's why I love the play The Crucible. It's the idea of witches around that time, pilgrim, colonial period, out there in the unknown woods. It freaks me out. And that movie, I think, was just brilliantly done. Old English. Felt natural. I forget the actress's name. What's her name? She was in Split. It's escaped my mind, but I just love that horror movie.
Have you seen The Lighthouse yet? The follow-up?
I have not seen The Lighthouse, but to be fair, I have bought it. It's one of those movies that I bought. Haven't watched it yet, but I will definitely. How about this? I'll take that as your recommendation. We'll definitely watch it this summer.
Okay. For Willem Dafoe alone is kind of the.
I saw one scene of his, and he just looked like a freaking madman.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yep." Watching that, and it was actually same director of The Witch. So Conjuring, Midsummer. Watched that earlier this year. I know you mentioned that in our correspondence leading up to this. God, I don't think there's ever been a day where I have not thought about that movie.
I've been trying to get my hands on there's that director's cut where it's 30 minutes longer, and it's supposed to, because I know you talk about it, and obviously as the ultimate breakup movie, and the director's cut, from what I heard, from articles, it's supposed to not fully explain, but it kind of gives you a little bit more insight from the guy's perspective, which I don't know if it's necessary, but people say that it's like watching an entirely different film. But again, then you're watching a 3-hour long movie.
Right. Yeah, and I've watched some of those deleted scenes too, and I'm very happy that they're not in a theatrical version. Mm-hmm. It seemed a lot more of the same thing that we were getting. I know, like, the big controversy behind that movie was men are afraid of that movie, or it's men's biggest fear come to reality in that. And I'd say, whatever, don't be a dick in your relationship. You don't want to be in it? Don't be in it.
It's basically as easy as it comes down to.
It really is. There are some people that I wish I could just kind of like hammer that in their brain. Like, hey, they're not good for you, and you don't want to be with them. Just leave them. It's as easy as that. But the lack of just care for the human body at the end of that film. If you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it for those listening. But just seeing these bodies just being casually dumped, like, right. What are some other fun ones? I'm going back to my history here that I've watched. Of course, I'm a big fan of Nightmare on Elm Street. Love that franchise. Halloween. Love that score.
For Nightmare, well, they're talking about doing I don't know if it's a remake or doing like Halloween, where it's a reboot / sequel. Do you have any kind of thoughts on that, or even the Halloween reboot sequel thing that's coming? Well, the new one that's coming out, or if it does come out.
I have not heard about. Is that the one with Jamie Lee Curtis that came out, or?
Yeah, there was the one that came out with Jamie Lee Curtis, and then there's the sequel to that called Halloween Kills, which is supposed to come out in October of this year, but we'll see. And then there's another. It was a 2-movie deal after Halloween, the Halloween 2018 or 2017 or whatever it came out. So
I have not heard about that. I'll be honest. I'll be interested. Yeah. I'll be interested, sure. And that's the fun thing with this channel. I'm interested in all movies. So if you recommend something to me, like, cool. I'm not gonna tell you no. Like I said, I just watched The Taint. I will say yes to anything. Let's see. I have some recommendations here. A movie called The Terrifier.
Okay.
It's on Netflix, I think, is what I'm told. It's this weird, creepy clown. Girl on the Third Floor. I think I'm only interested in that one because CM Punk, the wrestler, is in it. So
he does he's actually, it's surprisingly really good in it.
He's one of the few wrestlers who are very intelligent and doesn't come off as a wrestler except for his tats. Yeah. There was, I don't know if it's a horror film, but there's this animated film, and I think I'm planning on watching it and reviewing it for October, but it's called To Your Last Death.
Okay.
I saw it on Vudu, and it looked awesome. Yeah, animated movie. It has William Shatner in it, so I'm in there. In order to save her sibling, a young woman takes on her father and the powerful entity known as Game Master, who ensnares humans into diabolical plots while her species gambles on the outcome. It's almost like it looked like this video game type horror slasher film.
No, we'll look at both of those, to The Taint and To Your Last Death, to check out on here.
Oh man, The Taint. Ask your other co-hosts if they've seen this in this film, and definitely I'll listen in.
Okay.
But I'll be interested to hear their opinion on The Taint. Oh man, if you are squeamish with seeing the human member or the male member on screen constantly orgasming, there you go.
Okay.
And on that fact, I heard you talk about Itchy the Killer once. Yes. on one of your shows. Jerry Dennis also recommended that one to me too, so I'll check that one out. But I heard that the opening credits, it was done to, well, the aftermath of the male genitalia.
Yeah. Well, I'll recommend then to you for I guess one of my big one, Takashi Miike, who does Ichi, and he did Audition, and he's made like over 100 films now. A fun one that you might want to review is called Happiness of the Katakuris, if you haven't seen it yet.
I have not.
It is. I don't even know if I could spoil it. It's part musical, part dark comedy, part kind of weird zombie movie. It's like all over the place, but purposefully that way, obviously. But
Happy of the Katakuris.
Yes.
Okay.
It was, I think, 2001. He made it in the same year, almost, I think, in the same year he made Ichi. He made like 4 movies in 1 year type of thing, and it's...
Jesus.
It's out there. Oh, and there's Claymation, too. So...
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
But...
that's something I've noticed about doing this channel, too, is that, I have movie knowledge. I know more... Well, at least I like to think I know more than, say, the average person, but again, thousands of movies come out each year, but I'm always like, I never heard of this. Never heard of this one.
So I guess going back, what would be a good way for people to find you if they want to, on your social media and your YouTube channel? And
YouTube channel is Caleb Watches Movies, spelled how it sounds. Caleb Watches Movies. Also on Facebook under Caleb Watches Movies too. I am on Twitter and Instagram. I don't have enough characters available to spell that out, so it's Caleb Watch Movie on Twitter. Caleb Watches Movies on Instagram. So, if you are interested, if you are a fan, if I've sounded intelligent and inspired you listening to this podcast on YouTube or on any podcast app, then please, I would love this subscription. We are getting very close to potentially becoming monetized. So just need, I think we need like 500 more watched hours in order for my application to be submitted. So,
yeah. And I recommend, watching it too. I get a kick out of all of your videos. And as I've said before, it's, it's a fresh way of looking at the review site that people feel like they've seen so many times. And yours is fresh.
Well, and it's also, I know we're wrapping up, but it's wanted to touch on one last thing. I mean, last year I did, the end of the year, a top 10 video that really all these YouTubers do. And all of them do, top 10 films of 2019, 2018. And they're all basically the same film. Or the same films, just reordered. But what I do is I do the top 10 films that I reviewed. So it could be anything. It could be Shawshank going up against Jaws. It can be Harry Met Sally going up against 50 Shades of Grey. So, you do your own thing, whatever makes you happy. It's your extension. So, Caleb Watches Movies. If you're interested, subscribe and watch, please.
Thank you so much, Caleb, and it was a pleasure having you and being able to chat.
My pleasure. It's been too long since I've talked to you. So
yes,
I remember great times in improv, an improv class, and cabaret, and your little shtick that you did in Imaginary Invalid. So
yes, same to you.
Hey, this is Kyle, just dropping in to let you know to please like, subscribe, follow, tweet, TikTok, Snapchat, do the social media things. We're starting a new little segment here called Word on the Streets, and we've got some nice testimonials from some of our fans. Today's caller is Peter J. from New Zealand.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I think what Bloodhound Pix is doing is awesome, so keep up the good work, mates.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is produced by Josh Lee, Craig Dram, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Audio editing by Kyle Hintz.